Welcome to The Wire Online. I hope you are comfortable while watching this, and if you're not, don't worry, we'll wait. No, seriously, we'll wait for you to get comfortable. We have plenty of time.
Hey Brian, we're back.
Huh? Oh, like right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. We're back. Listen, hey guys, I have a question for you. Do you have a subject in school that's difficult for you? Do you have a class you dread, maybe one that you study for endlessly? It's the one that makes you feel like it's so complicated and it just makes your brain hurt? Mine is math. I'm horrible at math. It took me years to pass college algebra. But if you've ever had a class like this before, then you know sometimes the best thing you can do to understand something is to break it down. Maybe it's not a class. Maybe it's a sport like basketball. When I was, the first time I ever played basketball was in 5th grade. I was so excited. I just wanted to play and have fun, but I wanted to be good at it. And my dad knew if you wanted to be good at it, you had to do the fundamentals, those kind of boring drills. I know it says there's fun in the word fundamentals, but there's nothing fun about them. He made me do this drill where I had to put the ball in my hand and do this and then shoot it, but not even at a goal, just at a spot on the floor. And so to help me with my accuracy and help me with my shot. It was horribly boring. Or maybe it's not a sport, maybe it's an instrument you're learning to play, like the piano. So unless you're some genius whiz with music, my guess is you had to start by learning how to read music, you had to learn the keys, and then you had to play something like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which nobody's like, can't wait to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Or maybe for you, you're learning to build something like a computer. And for you, when you break it down, you find that there's little pieces all up inside there, and each piece does something, and you have to learn how it does, how it does its role with the other parts of the computer. It's complicated. When we're learning how to do something like play an instrument or a new sport or build a computer or something like that, the best way to do it is to break it into simpler steps. The same thing is true when it comes to understanding something that's complicated and confusing. We often hear about the big ideas of the Bible, and sometimes those big ideas can be confusing. Listen, I want to be honest with you, okay? Sometimes I find the Bible hard to read and understand. I know, right? I've asked a lot of questions over the years, questions maybe you've asked as well. Maybe you've wondered things like this. Am I supposed to read the Bible? How am I supposed to read the Bible? Where should I even start? Why does the Bible use weird words that I don't understand? Thou, this, that, what? How is this book any different from other books on religions? How are there a bunch of books inside of a book? Why does the Bible not talk about certain topics? Does it matter if I read the Bible? Is everything in the Bible even real? Why don't I feel closer to God when I read the Bible? How do we know that this book is the right book? If the Bible was written a long time ago, then how does it apply to my life today? Do I have to read my Bible to believe in Jesus? Whew, that's a lot of questions. Just know if you've ever asked those questions or have wanted to ask those questions, you're not alone. And if you're looking for a safe place to ask those questions, I highly recommend a small group. While I've had many of the same questions about the Bible over the years, the Bible's also given me a lot of answers. You see, the Bible helps show us God's best plan for us. So that's why I don't think we should stop reading it just because we don't understand it. When we break the Bible down, we may find that there's a big reason it's important for our lives. I want to look at something one of Jesus' friends wrote and hopefully find some answers to some of your questions. His friend John started his account of Jesus' life in a really unique way. You see, other people wrote about Jesus' life, and they focused mainly on what happened, but John focuses on why it happened. Check it out. Check this out. In John 1:1, he starts off by saying, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So, that clears everything up, right? Well, wrong. If anything, you're now more confused. Well, this verse is actually a really big deal, which is why it's important for us to break it down. So, okay, here's the deal. John was a man who grew up in ancient Jewish culture. Because of that, John would have been taught the Old Testament or the Jewish scriptures since the time he was a little boy. In that culture, God's word in the Jewish scriptures was really important. It was God's word that spoke the universe into existence. It was God's word that the Jewish people believed brought healing, rescued them, and guidance to their ancestors. See, to John and the others in this culture, God's word was about so much more than just words. God's word represented everything about who God is. It was the reflection of God himself. So, John goes on to write this in 1 John 1:14. "So the Word became human and made his home among us." So, here John explained that God's Word became human In other words, John is saying Jesus is God's Word in human form. Now, that is both really cool and a little weird. And by itself, it's a little strange. But remember, this is why it's important to break it down and to look beyond just what we see on the surface. You see, Jesus, being God's Word in human form, allows us to approach the Bible in a different way. According to John, if we break down the Bible to what's most important, all we need to do is look at Jesus. He is God's Word come to life. Every verse, every story, every piece of instruction should be read with Jesus in mind. In fact, the biggest job of the Bible is to point to Jesus. And why does this matter so much, you ask? That is a great question. Because Jesus is the best and most perfect representation of God. And if you think this is just some crazy idea John had, and you're like, this guy's off his handles, think again. The Apostle Paul wrote the same thing later in a letter to the church in Colossians. Okay. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. You see, in other words, Jesus shows us exactly what God is like. The Bible points us to what God is like, and Jesus is the perfect representation of God, which means the point of the Bible is to get to know God better. And what the Bible tells us about Jesus helps us know God the best. You see, everything Jesus did, everything he said, his habits, his interactions with others, were all perfect examples of a life lived according to God's plan. And they can be examples of how you and I can live out God's Word. Now, I know the entire Bible didn't just magically make sense. I get it now. But the point of the Bible is to get to know God better. So why not start with Jesus? If the point of the Bible is to get to know God better, then maybe that changes the way we read it, understand it, and apply it to our lives. Sometimes the easiest way to understand something as a whole is to study the smaller parts of it first. So my challenge to you is this. Rather than trying to grasp the entire Bible, start with Jesus. After all, he's the point, right? I'd recommend starting where we did today, in John, and ask yourself these questions as you read through the Bible and read through John. What does this teach me about God? I mean, when you read about Jesus and what he did, like if he's the representation of God, then what does it show you about God, his character, his motive, his desires? What does this teach me about myself? When you read about Jesus and the way he lived his life, like, do you match up with the way Jesus lived his life? Do you look like Jesus in the way that he would do things? What does this teach me about how I treat others? You know, Jesus had a very unique and specific way that he interacted with other people and he treated them. Does your life and the way you treat other people match up with the way Jesus treated them? Now, once you've asked those questions, I want you to keep reading. Listen, don't give up just because it's confusing. Keep in mind what you've learned about Jesus. And remember, the point of the Bible is to get to know God better. All right, everything cleared up, right? No more questions, no more confusion. You got this? I know, this doesn't clear everything up and doesn't answer all your questions, but I think it does give us a great way to think about the Bible as a whole. Listen, you're not alone in trying to read and understand the Bible, but one of the best things you can do when it comes to breaking down the Bible is to not do it alone. This is one of the many reasons small groups are amazing. It gives you a place to belong and ask your questions. So if you're checking this out and you're not plugged into a small group, click on the link below and we'll help get you connected. We love you guys and thank you so much for being here online. Remember, the point of the Bible is to get to know God better. We'll see you next time.